Well, again, it's good for me to be here with everybody, stepping a little bit out of my realm. But I like to think I've kind of made my career out of doing things that people told me I couldn't do when it came to communications and selling products. I start every presentation I do nowadays with my Gator because I am a Florida Gator, proud of it. And one of the things you're going to hear me talk about is how important it is that wherever you go, with whoever you're meeting with, that you're always repeating your key messages. And for me, the Gator Nation is kind of my key message. Now, that's not what we'll talk about today, but again, just never forget about that. I mentioned my background being a little bit unusual. I actually worked for our Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences at the University of Florida when I was getting my graduate degree. I taught a basic introductory course in journalism to agriculture majors, and I learned more about blueberries and strawberries and St. Augustine grass than I ever imagined possible. But kind of got hooked on it, and stayed in contact with a lot of those people at Hice and went into the newspaper business. And my other real love is power sports, and I made my way to Harley-Davidson, a big, heavy, slow, noisy, expensive American motorcycle that everybody thought was going out of business. Why would anybody pay $15,000 for a Harley-Davidson when you can buy a Yamaha or a Kawasaki or a Honda for a third of that will perform better, that looks almost the same, and really, in the mind is probably a smarter thing to do. We were able to take that brand and capitalize on the emotional connection the brand had with its consumers, and develop a theme line for Harley-Davidson. We fulfill dreams through the experiences of motorcycling. And that says more about that company than literally pages and pages and pages of key messages. So again, back to that concept that the simple, straightforward message that cuts through all the clutter, and we'll talk a little bit about clutter, is really important with whatever we do. I've had some less than successful endeavors, but we got lots of visibility. Are you all familiar with Segway? The little scooter that you stand on and you lean forward and it goes forward, you lean back, it stops. It's 100% electric. It gets the equivalent of about 450 miles per gallon of gas. You'd think they'd be selling like hotcakes right now. They're getting publicity like you wouldn't believe, but they're $5,200, and the company still has not been able to trigger that switch into the public that this is the right thing to do for the environment, for their local transportation needs, for whatever. So, I'm proud of what we did with the company with the launch. I think we made a lot of people more aware of the inefficiency of our transportation systems, especially in big cities. I honestly believe the reason that product hasn't been successful is because of the price. It's $5,200, to buy a Segway, and it's just a little bit too expensive. And then now I'm at the University of Florida, my alma mater, and just loving being back there, where we've been told that you could never brand the University of Florida. We have 51,000 students. We have 16 colleges. We have 300 different majors. How could you possibly brand the University of Florida? Again, with some basic research and really understanding the customer, and our customer base was very broad. It's our students, it's our faculty. We wouldn't be there if it weren't for the faculty, so I never want to forget the importance that they play in the whole system. Our alumni, state legislators, city legislators, people throughout the country. And we've created a campaign that we call the Gator Nation that is from a phrase that's been around for years and years and years. People have always talked about the football program as the Gator Nation. And we just didn't want the football program to have that idea. That was too big of an idea. So again, the University of Florida, the foundation for the Gator Nation, a real simple phrase, is kind of what we build all of our communications around. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is how to use public relations and marketing communications techniques and some message development, which we'll get into right before lunch, You know, we started that with the list this morning, and the list I put up on the board. Takeaways from yesterday and these. Those are really the beginnings of the key messages, I believe, you know, for the whole group. So, what we'll do today is talk a little bit about public relations, what it is, what it isn't, what it can and cannot do. We'll talk about the tools of the practice and how public relations can be used by you here in the room to reach your goals and objectives. And I think this is already, you know, pretty obvious. We want you to leave here with some knowledge, some ideas of what you can do to help with your messages, and I think we've made a heck of a start there, and just the discussion that's taking place within the group is really important there. So we want to make sure you leave with at least 2 ideas that will help further the mission of the Green Blue Summit. So the awareness process is something that's very complicated. We just heard about the California project. It's been going on for 5-6 years. It's a great campaign, done for all the right reasons. And yet after 6 years, only 15% of the population admit to being aware, of the campaign. That just shows you how difficult it is to get the attention of the public. And really you have to go through several stages to create the awareness for your efforts, your campaign. First, you have to get the public to hear what you're saying. I mean, there's so much clutter out there, it's tough. Then they have to really learn, they have to take it into them, they have to accept it. They have to basically, I like to call it learn, what your message is. Once they have heard you, once they understand what you're saying, then you have to convince them to make the decision. In my case, it was to buy a Harley-Davidson motorcycle instead of a Honda, or to buy a Segway instead of a car. So you have to get them to that point. But that's not far enough. Once they've made the decision, then they have to act. Again, very complicated process. And then if you want them to come back, you have to continually reinforce those messages, product messages, concepts, ideas, to keep them coming back, or you lose them. And what good is it if somebody comes into the store and decides to purchase an environmentally friendly pesticide or fertilizer product, and they go home and they use it once, if there's no follow-up with them, no reason for them to come back and repeat that purchase, which is something that we want people to do. I mentioned we're just overwhelmed, and these numbers, you can see 10 different people talk about it, and you'll hear 10 different numbers. But basically, we're bombarded with messages. I don't have to, tell you guys that. Anybody who drove in or just walks around town can see how overwhelmed we are. 65% of the consumers surveyed out there say they are so overwhelmed with messages that they don't even pay attention anymore. Again, back to that need to reach people. Some measurements have found that we receive as many or even more than 3,500 different messages every day of our lives. Again, talk about clutter. It's like as many cars are on the highway in Gainesville when I'm trying to go to work. So most people will tune out the different messages. Again, we want to talk today about how to get them to focus on those messages. I believe there are a couple of real simple things you can do. Creativity is key. The California project, a great example with a creative theme and slogan, some nice branded icons that people could remember. And they differentiated themselves from any other program out there. And the differentiation is really key. That was one of the things we found with the motorcycles, that all the big cruisers were marketed the same way. People were marketing Harley-Davidsons the same way they were marketing Kawasaki Vulcans and things like that. There was no differentiation back in the late 80s. We had to differentiate that. Same thing for the University of Florida. How many universities are out there achieving greatness or striving to build tomorrow's leaders today? Everybody's doing that. So, nobody's different. So we really tried to differentiate, and differentiation is really, really important. I don't have the statistical